Good day, everyone, and a warm welcome to our last system webinar for 2022. It's great to see all of you. Today's topic is behavior and context. Those of you that are doing the system webinar training to become accredited as a Shadowmatch user, keep in mind that if you have missed any of the webinars, the live sessions, you're welcome to watch the recording. You can just notify Charmaine. She will send you the link. You can also find the link on the Shadowmatch events calendar. Just go to the date. And the way that you would recognize these webinars on the calendar is they are all in the Shadowmatch red color, the burgundy or the maroon color. So you can just go through the calendar and you will find the recordings. Remember then to watch the recording and send a one-page summary to Charmaine in order for you to qualify to get your certificate as an accredited Shadowmatch user. Furthermore, remember that your microphone is currently in the mute setting. Towards the end of the webinar, as always, I will enable the setting for you to unmute yourself and ask questions after the presentation. The last important thing from my side before I hand to Peter for the discussion part of the webinar, allow me to share my screen. I would just like to go through the Black Friday special. Those of you that have missed it and that haven't logged in the last day or two, we are running a Black Friday special, and the special is, or the promotion is already live. You can go to any of our websites, shadowmatch.co.za or shadowmatch.com, shadowmatch.net, shadowmatch.us, and you can then find the Black Friday promotion. So if you go to any of the websites, you will see that there's a big banner, Black Friday, discounts on all reports and worksheets. You can order immediately. And as you will see, it's available until the 25th of November, and there's a 30% discount. Now, if you click on that banner, it will bring you to this screen. And here you can see that you've got two options. You can either buy for your business, or you can just buy for yourself. So any individual who lands on one of our pages or who goes to shadowmatchreports.com will have the option to buy any of the Shadowmatch reports at a 30% discount. Now, if the individual clicks on, I would like to buy for myself, they will be guided or they will be directed to the shadowmatchreports.com website. And here you can see that there's the banner as well. If they then go and click on Quick Buy Reports, the system will take them to the basket. And here you can see that all the prices have been crossed out with this special price, the 30% discounted price. They can choose what they like, add it to the basket, and then upon checkout, they will get the final price, and they can either use PayPal or PayFast to pay for their purchase. So that's for individuals. If we go back to that screen, if you would like to buy for your business and you click on that button, the system will open up the terms and conditions. Now, I want to highlight a few things here. Keep in mind that if you purchase, this is only for bulk purchases. If you look at the fourth point, the discount starts at 10 items and is limited to 1,000 for each worksheet, report, or program. So this is not a pay-as-you-go special. You have to buy at least 10 of any of these reports or worksheets, and then the discounted price will kick in. And this is where you will indicate how many worksheets you would like, skills grid worksheets, development programs, career reports, study reports, or work relationship reports. The payment must be made by the 7th of December. In other words, we must receive the payment in our bank account by latest 7 December. In order for you to qualify for the 30% discounted price. If we don't receive the payment by the 7th of December, then this special purchase will expire. The worksheets and the reports that you purchase will only be made available on your Shadowmatch entity or created as a new entity with the available reports or worksheets that you have purchased once we've cleared the payment in our bank account. Point number 3, the worksheets and the reports that you purchase on the Black Friday promotion or Black Friday special, they do not expire. So if you buy 100 worksheets and you know that you're going to use it over the next 3 years, that's fine. They don't expire. I think that's all from my side with regards to the Black Friday. Maybe a last comment. The moment you have captured your purchase, how many worksheets and you would like, and you go next, the system will obviously ask you for your detail. your details, and that will generate an email to us, to head office and to our finance department, and we immediately then do the invoice. We send you the invoice within 24 working hours, and then you can process the payment on your side. The moment we see the payment in our bank account, we will then make the purchase available on your Shadowmatch entity. If you are a new customer and you would like to make use of this special, please go ahead. We will allocate you to a consultant and we will guide you through the process of getting your entity registered, getting you trained on how to use these reports and the worksheets and to interpret the results. All of that's quite easy, and the training is quick. So new customers are also welcome to make use of I would like to buy for my business. Any questions we can handle later? I think from my side, that's all for now. Peter, let me stop share, and then I'll hand to you to continue with the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lizette, and welcome everybody. This is, as Lizette rightly said, the last one in the series of training for our users of the Shadowmatch engine, or the broad application of the system in business, in learning institutions, but also in other aspects of the value that the system provides. For instance, the team building and team analysis, and the interview packs that are on the system, and a lot of the other stuff that is there. So for today, the topic for today is quite critical with regards to Shadowmatch, because it's one of the anchor points for the Shadowmatch working engine in terms of how do we live our life and how do we function optimally in a given situation. Now there's a bit of a challenge here, because in the history of psychology and the research of the behavior of people and the thinking and the psychoanalysis and all the big names that we have along the history of psychological research and work, we have all kinds of schools of thought. We have the psychoanalysis and the social psychology and the development psychology, and then we have the behaviorists, and we have the first school or the first generation or the initial school of behaviorism, and then the second or the second behaviorist theories or research. So there are many of these, and there are recently a lot of new ones have been published. It's not so new, but mindfulness and narrative therapy and understanding the psychology of people according to the narratives of their lives, or the story of their lives. There are many of them. But in this whole pyramid and structure of research and theories, there's something that we miss. And that is the fact that our behavior is determined by the situation that we are in. It's largely dependent on where we are and what are the events around us. I am quite convinced that our behavior is largely determined by our habits and the given situation of our environment. And as I have shared with you previously, I think the ego position of a person, or the process in the brain that must bring these habit patterns of us in line with the expectations of the environment, is a Freudian idea that I really like. I don't like a lot of his other ideas, but this is the one that I like. But the point that we need to understand is that there's no rocket science in it. It is as stupid as this. If my environment changes, then my behavior will change. I cannot behave in church as I would behave when I'm at the circus, or the other way around. I cannot behave on a golf course as if it's a tennis court. I must engage my environment with an alignment of my behavior with the environment. And this is an absolute critical point when we look at the working environment. And this is actually the focus for today, but it's applicable to every other environment. If you walk into a hospital and the environment then talks to you and you change your behavior to be that of a hospital visitor, a patient, or somebody visiting a friend or a loved one. So the environment plays a very important role in our behavior. The problem is, and this is where I have to share the screen now. The challenge is that I came to the conclusion that the success of people is very dependent on how they engage and integrate their behavior with the environment, and also the happiness of people has got a very strong environment component to it. Initially, my plans were to draw a map of the environment. So when I started, when the penny fell in my mind, the penny dropped, that people fail and they struggle because they battle with the environment. And there will be a day when I tell you the whole story. When the penny dropped in my mind, because of one case study, I realized that the environment and the way an individual engages with the environment is absolutely critical for the well-being, the success, the progress, and also the happiness of that individual. And then my initial plans were to create a map of the environment. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a tick list based on a software application that I was busy building, so that I can tick what does the environment expect from an individual. And I almost got it right. I didn't get it right. So just relax. I didn't get it right. I'll tell you why. And when I don't get something right, can't answer the question, that I change the question. That's the way my mind works. That's how I make progress in my own life. So what happened was I started to create different maps of any environment, a working environment, a play environment, a family environment, house, university, school, classroom, whatever it might be. I created maps of what in the environment, what is the expectation in the environment, and how does the environment change, and which components demands certain behaviors from an environment perspective. And obviously I completely failed with it. Because the first question was, so if I could draw a map of the expectations and demands of the environment, how do I know who will like this environment and who won't like it? Because as I went through all the tests that we had available those days, I couldn't get the thing together. I couldn't bring the attributes of an individual and the demands of the environment together. I just couldn't make sense out of the data that I have and the information that I had. So let's start with the complexities of the environment, and we ask a simple question. What defines context, or the environment, the situation where I am, where I have to function, do a job, perform something, play a game, or whatever it might be? There are basically 6, but that's an understatement. I've reduced them to 6 because we just don't have time to discuss all of them. It's just too complicated, and I'll share with you the complexities of this. For the 6 that I have selected for our discussions, there's a social environment, there's a physical environment, operational, expectations and demands. So the environment has a specific language of expectation that comes to me. I will explain this. There's a time and date component to an environment that is beyond important. We cannot overstate time and date as an environment, structure, and construct that has a message, an expectation, and a demand on those individuals in that environment. And then there's the question of support and the availability of support to that environment. Let's have a look at the detail around these 6 constructs. On a social level, this is the heavyweight component of any environment where we find ourselves in, and where there's an expectation, or there's a goal, or there's a task, or there's something that I need to do in that environment, whatever it might be. I go to the airport because I need to fly to Cape Town or Dubai, London, or New York. So when I walk into the airport, yes, I've decided to enter the airport. My behavior with people in the airport and my behavior without people in the airport is different. And it might be completely different. If I walk into a church or into a sport event or to a music concert, the people that are there plays a very important part of what is the environment and what it's made of. Now we can look at some of these sort of subcomponents, the culture, composition, and who are the people around me? How do they see the world? How do they understand the world? How do they work with their world in terms of their understanding of the environment? And if you have ever had the experience of walking into a society or into a social setting where you realize these people are completely different to who I am, you suddenly have the experience of, I'm not sure what is expected from me, and I'm not sure how to engage with these people along the lines of the things that I need to do or not to do. Whenever you go to a country, a foreign country, and you experience the people around you, suddenly they talk a language, you've got no idea what they talk, and you can't talk back to them, and they can't talk to you. And there's nobody with the ability to understand any of the languages that you speak. Suddenly, you have an experience of an environment that could be hostile, it could be unfriendly, you might experience rejection. Some people are invited to those environments. For me, for instance, we were in France, Lisette and I couldn't deal with it. I could not deal with it. Lisette was quite comfortable, but I couldn't handle this. I was out. And then there's a lot of other things within the social component of the people that make up an important part of the environment, religion. And now we can list, there are a minimum of 10 more contributors to what is the social content of this environment. Let me give you an example of a social environment, a people environment that can be very hostile. There's a business of 10 engineers. They are 10 highly qualified, highly specialized chemical engineers working on a project. And they have to employ somebody who has got zero knowledge, reference, or vocabulary about the world of chemical engineers. That individual has a specific task, and that is to provide support to the engineers outside of their engineering work. But this new individual who is the non-engineer doesn't understand the vocabulary, doesn't understand the content, doesn't understand the language, cannot participate in discussions, can do nothing of those. If this individual experiences these engineers as hostile, unfriendly, aloof, cold, and ignorant, it's normal. The next person might not experience this environment like that. How do we know? We don't. We don't know. We cannot bring it together. It's a guess. It's a thumbs up. You can't guess it. Let's push for time. The physical environment. What does the environment look and feel like? Is it outdoors? Is it indoors? Is it a very busy environment, or is it quiet? Is it very rushed in terms of time constraints? And are there many activities in the environment, or are there less activities in the environment? Noise, outdoors, indoors, color, space, all those things. There are individuals that can deal with a quiet, very quiet, and sort of a library style environment. Then there are those individuals who cannot live with it. They can't. How do we know it? We don't. We don't know who's going to love this or who doesn't love it. Operational. What happens in the environment? How does it work? And what is the process? So how do things work here? What are the processes? How do I function in an environment if the processes are such that I cannot participate, or I cannot work the processes, I cannot engage with the processes because maybe I'm not fully trained, or I do not like mechanical processes, or I am uncomfortable with washing the windows of a 50-story building, hanging on ropes on the outside of the building, and I wash the windows from the outside. Some people love it. Some people don't, for some strange reason. Some people don't like hanging on ropes on a 50-story building on the outside, washing the windows. So how does the environment and the mechanics of the environment work? And then what are the expectations and the demands? What is expected from me to be functional in that environment? What must be done, and what is the expectation on each person? How do I play the game so that I become a positive, participating role player in this environment? What are the implications if expectations are not met? What are the dependencies of expectations? How do they depend on each other? Let me just go back to the middle bullet point. What are the implications if the expectations of this environment are not met? Let me give you an example. I'm an emergency medical officer, and there is a car accident, or there's a fire and a house burned down, and I'm called out. And the environment is such that there are people in serious medical trouble. The expectation on me is to live up to the demand that I have to save these individuals' lives. What happens if that demand is not met? They die. I want you to feel the difference between this and I'm walking into a lecture room as a lecturer for first-year students at university, and for some reason they don't pitch. What are the implications of they pitch at a different place, and there's a misconnection between me as the lecturer and the students? What are the implications for that failure? Zero, nothing. What are the expectations if I am an emergency officer and I get onto a scene and there are 3, 4, 5 people in desperate need of medical help and I fail? So we must be very sensitive to the fact that we react to the expectation and the demands of the environment with an understanding of what if I don't get this right? What if I don't pull this off? And in some environments, despite the fact that the implications are very limited, the people around me might drum up an energy that convinced me that this is a matter of life and death. So the society, the social environment, and the energy that they project could drum up an energy that makes me very stressed because I haven't delivered this document to this lawyer on time. What could happen? Nothing. But the energy in the environment is such that this is the end of the world. And I then react to that energy of the demands that's been placed on me. Time and date. Time of the day and date of the week, month, and year. These are things that the penny dropped in my mind when somebody said to me, you must remember, working here on a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday is easy, but come try it on a Saturday and a Sunday. Come try work here on a Saturday and Sunday. And from 10 o'clock onwards in the evening, then be here. So there's a time date stamp on the environment that could change the entire mechanics of the environment and the demands it places on the individuals working and living there. And then there are season issues. Time of the year, winter, summer, cold, wind, rain. Doing a certain job when it rains can be beyond havoc. If it doesn't rain, it could be very easy. So we have these complexities of the environment that we bring together. Support from people. People are much more prone to be successful if they are convinced that they have the support from the people around them to meet the demands of the environment if they struggle, than when they are not convinced that the people around them can help them. The stress levels that one experience as a result of the availability of people who can support me is completely different from where there are people that can support an individual and there are no individual that support those people who have to perform a task. The availability of systems and tools. This is actually the very nice picture. If we place this person, this firefighter, in a dangerous environment without the tools and the masks and the oxygen, etc., as support tools, cannot do the job. And if we expect from the individual to still do the job, we put this person in serious trouble and stress. Now, this can happen anywhere. It can happen in any place. I always feel sorry for the customer service people when there's some kind of power failure or a load shedding, and they have to tell the customer, sorry, I can't help you. I can actually see and feel how the stress in them starts to overrun them. And they just say, well, my system is down. And then customers start shouting and screaming, I've been standing for an hour in the queue. And now the social component of a hostile society comes into play. And suddenly the operational realities of the environment changes, and the expectations and the demands are out of reason, unreasonable, and it's middle of the day. So these things, they influence one another, and they have a huge impact on the individual. And then active learning and mentorship. Is there somebody that can teach me and then can take and be my mentor in this process, so that I have somebody that I can follow and somebody that can guide me through challenging moments of the environment? This is a very limited list. For those of you who are interested in expanding this list, this is a limited list, but this is the minimum that we can work with as the complexities of the environment. Now, imagine we've got to score these points and give them a weighted score so that we determine whether the environment has got a high intensity or a low intensity. And we work with what I then called, those days when I did the work to try and map the environment, as a low intensity or a soft environment, and a high intensity or a hard environment. And I worked with a contonym. I had a continuous line and say, this is a very soft context or environment, and it becomes harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, up to the point where I have a very hard and a very sort of demanding and a high risk environment. So, and very demanding, just in general terms, very demanding. It expects from me to do things that I can't do. And then obviously the line works both ways. This is a very hard environment. It becomes softer, and until it becomes a very soft context on this side. I want to show you a few pictures and we will come back to them. If I look at this environment and I say, is this a soft or a hard environment? Good question. Is this a soft or a hard environment? Good question. Is this a soft or a hard working environment? Equally good question. Can I go back? If I have friends, if you show them this working space, they say, to death, I won't work there. Forget it. Forget it. Get it out of your mind. This will kill me. It's the hardest environment that I have ever seen. Why? Because I have the behavior patterns to work here. And they say, this is the place where I want to work. These are the challenges that I love and that I want to engage. If I show this picture to a professional golfer with 20 years of golf, professional golf experience, you would say it's a tough environment, but I love it. If you show it to a young upcoming golf pro, you would say this is the toughest environment that you can ever think of. You have no idea how tough this environment is. And you do not understand how challenging it is to play against the world's best. And your life is at stake, because if you don't make it and you don't make the cut, you don't have money, and you have to fly to the next golfing event, and maybe you're out of cash, and it's just impossible. But for us from the outside, we say, this is nice, I like this. From the outside, we would say, many people would say, this is a hard environment. I have many people who say, this is what I want. This is the place where I would like to live my professional career. I like it. Then we have people, I have mentioned to you that I have friends who would look at this and say, forget it. Forget it. I'll come for coffee there, but it'll have to be a short coffee. You won't get me there. And then we have other people who say, this is lovely. I would love to working in an office like this. And this is despite the social presence of other people who works with me, who are the colleagues that are around me. So the bottom line is, whether it is this, and this is where I started to realize that my model is not going to fly. This is not going to take wings. Where I realized that some people say this is tough. Some say this is fantastic. Some people say this is okay. Others say this is fantastic. Others say, Some people say, I want to give this a go. Some say, no, this is, I don't have the behaviors for this. Then I came to the conclusion that it is not determined by the environment. It is determined by the individual who has to function in the specific environment. It is not the environment that is at question. It is the person that must function in that environment that is at question. So we cannot map the environment and come to the conclusion that this will be a good environment. We guess. Yes, some people have a good ability to guess and to judge this on gut feel. But I have a sneaky feeling, it's as good as trying to win the lotto. So what do we say to one another? We say that this is what we can't do. These are the things that we cannot do. I've been through this. I have done extensive research on this before I started building Shadow Match. And I came to the conclusion that, at least for me, and I spent 5 years on this, we can't determine what behaviors will work optimally in a specific environment by mapping the environment. So we cannot map the environment and then work from the environment to who will fit that environment. It's a guess. It's unscientific. It's a gut feel thing. We can't do it. I couldn't do it. Then we can't use the environment to shape the behavior of people. It's an outdated idea and it doesn't work. We'll get back to this. But we can't say, well, I'll put the person in the mine. He must just cope and learn the environment as he or she works there. We can't do that. There are 110 reasons, but the first reason is that you can both destroy the environment and the individual. We'll talk about that, but just bank this note in your mind. It's an outdated idea and it doesn't work. Then we can't train people to perform optimally in an environment that doesn't work for them. It's not a knowledge question. It is not a skills, academic qualifications and knowledge issue. It's a behavioral issue. Does this environment work for my behavior patterns? So does the environment accommodate my behavioral habits, or does it not accommodate my habits? So is there a fit or is there not a fit? So we can't train people to perform optimally in an environment that doesn't work for them. And we can't change the environment without changing almost every aspect of it. Remember, let's say we are 10 people working in a specific environment and suddenly we change the environment by doing some weird thing. We change processes, or we change the way we do things, or we change the content of the work, or we change the management style. And then the entire environment changes. Some people who loved the environment previously might then just resign and walk out. We have case studies and examples of that. And some would say, yeah, it's better now. The others might say, well, I like it as it was. Others might say, no, I didn't like it as it was. I like it as it's now. So it's not, we can't change the environment without changing almost every aspect of it. And there are hundreds of examples that we can use. These are the points that we normally don't want to hear when we talk about these things. So brace yourself, let's hear it. Let's just listen to it. People with active or strong habits, in the way we normally refer to the habits, very active habits, people who have with active habits who have to function in an environment that doesn't work for them, destroy the environment. Don't underestimate the power of one individual with strong, very well embedded and assertive habits. They can destroy the environment for everybody working in it. And this I have seen more than once, where people come as the CEO into a business and he's the chief executive officer. Suddenly he has a complete different way. Everything must work. Destroys the business, destroys the environment, destroy the people, and they resign and they walk out. So we must not underestimate the power of strong habits that must function in an environment that doesn't work for that individual. That person can destroy that environment in a very short period of time. So keep that in mind. If we bring somebody into a soft environment with strong and assertive, very well-defined habits, brace yourself. Brace yourself. Then people with soft habits working where the environment doesn't work for them adapt. They adapt. But then they become frustrated over a long period of time and they leave. Soft habits have the initial ability to adapt if the environment doesn't work for them. But it's unsustainable. Over a period of time, they become frustrated and they leave that environment. Sometimes they don't resign, but they disengage. They do not resign from the job, but they disengage from the activities and the content of the work. So they start doing the work in a mechanical way. They do it just because they are paid to do it. They don't think, they don't engage, and because the environment doesn't work for them. And we had the webinar on employee engagement months ago, and if you would like to watch it, it's on the list. Then this sentence, number 3 on the bullet points. Strong habits don't change, they break. It is always painful. Strong habits, above 50, increasingly so, do not change, they break. And there are always blood on the floor. Either the person with the habits suffers serious injuries in terms of failure or aggressive behavior towards him or her, or whatever it might be. But strong habits do not change, they break. And it's always painful. If we want to deal with a person with strong habits, we must have the environment where these habits can function without being threatened or challenged. If we challenge or we pose a threat to someone with strong habits, be very careful. They will brace themselves and they will break the environment. And they can do it. Those habits do not listen to reason. That's the point. Soft habits can develop. It's a process. It takes time. It must be done with purpose and with planning. If we have an environment and the demands from the environment are on stronger habits than the habits that I have, then we can take time and I can develop those habits. But if it's not done with purpose and in a managed process and in a planned way with support, over time, my soft habits will become frustrated, irritated, and I will either disengage from the content, do it mechanically, or I will walk out. So we have a risk on both sides. If the environment expects a specific profile of behaviors and we bring somebody in with stronger habits, we have a risk that that individual will destroy the environment. If we bring somebody in with soft habits, we have the benefit of an initial, they might adapt, they might conform to the expectations of the environment. If we don't go through a process of learning and development and helping the individual to grow those habits to be more fit for the environment, the person will either check out or leave. So we must try to find a match for optimal performance and success. So how do we do it? And where do we start and where do we go? So we obviously have the system. What we do is we let those who enjoy a specific environment tell us what their unique profile of habits are. So we need to go to those people who experience this environment as the place where they want to be. This is the place where they are successful. This is the place where they engage the working content and they love doing it, and they move forwards and further with the work, and this just works for them. We need to ask them, tell us about your habits, so that we have a profile of what are the behaviors that will work in this specific environment, because we have now said that we cannot map the environment. We need a different question so that we answer the challenge. So ask the people, those who have been successful in that environment over a period of time, 8 months, tell us about your habits. They can't. We have to use a system because they don't, it's a thing that just happens. Remember, habits that are rote, they happen without us planning them and guiding them and steering them. These habits just happen. That's why they are habits. And it could be passive or active. So how do we do it? Complete the Shadow Match worksheet and create a context-specific benchmark. That's how we do it. It's simple, straightforward. Answer 70 questions. The administrator put them in a benchmark, and we've got the benchmark. What then? Then we match others doing the same job in the same context or the environment to this benchmark, and the system will tell you what frustrates them and what can be done to help them. So we have 50 teachers in a school, and we have 5. They like and enjoy the school, they love it, and they make progress, and they are successful. We create a benchmark of those 5, and we match the others to those 5, and we say what frustrates, because the thing that frustrates me will be different from what frustrates you and the next and the next and the next person, because our habits are not the same. It's straightforward. So what else? Match applicants for a job to the context-specific benchmark for the job, and appoint individuals with the habits of the benchmark. This is not rocket science. There's nothing in it. Interview those applicants with most similar habits to the benchmark, because then you know you have the natural behaviors of an individual that will function in an optimal way in that specific context and demand. And what else? Determine what development plan is necessary for each employee. Help them to be their best. How? Coach them. That's how. We coach them. It's not a discussion. It's not, listen, I see your problem solving is a bit low. In this environment, I see the benchmark has got high problem solving. Don't you want to give attention, a bit attention to your problem solving habits so that we can make it a bit stronger? And then we leave. That is like trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. Won't work. You've wasted a minute of your time and a minute of your employee or your customer's time. Coach them. Coaching is the way in which we help people to grow the behaviors and to manage themselves in a specific environment over a period of time, so that the habits have time to develop in order to fit the environment optimally. This is how we do it. And this is what Shadow Match does. We've been doing it for many years, and it works every time optimally. Now, with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to ask if there are any questions. Lizette, back to you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. That was insightful and very well explained webinar and session. We appreciate that. I think from my side, there were no questions in the chat. So I am going to enable the setting. And then if you do have a question, you're welcome to switch on your video. See, Paul's video is already on, or you can raise your virtual hand and then you are welcome to go ahead. So let me do that. Great. Paul, you're welcome to go ahead.
Hi, Peter. Thanks again. Just a question. If the environment is so, let's say, dynamic, it keeps changing, that you can't actually see those 6 contextual aspects that you mentioned. And I suppose a fire station or a fire situation or an emergency situation would be like that. But what happens if we can't actually contextualize what the situation is going to be like? And you might know the habits of the person, but the environment is like totally random. You have a work environment that is perhaps like an investment firm that's busy going through the 2008 financial crisis. It's just really stormy. How do you measure that context? So how do you then, is your test of the person going to be reliable in terms of the context?
Paul, you can't. You cannot map the environment. It's impossible, because the environment is such a sensitive and a dynamic reality, especially in a changing world. Some environments are very stable, yes, but that's also a challenge, because some people don't have the habits for a stable environment. Some environments are very dynamic. The firefighters, I've done some work on the firefighting side of work. You know, it's a weird situation because for many hours, they do absolutely nothing. They wait. They wash the fire engines and they keep the place as clean as a hospital. But that's just a plan from their employers to keep them busy in some way. But you can't let them go home because the moment the fire breaks out, then it's a disaster. And then you need those habits. So for successful career firefighters, you've got this very weird working environment. The only thing that works is it doesn't matter what the environment is. Catch those people who enjoy it and who are successful under those turmoil conditions. Catch those ones who say, I love this, I like it, I thrive on this. And then let them do shadow match, because then you've got a benchmark for the environment, because we cannot map the environment. It's just too complicated and too dynamic. Whilst habits, and this is why I prefer to work with habits, Paul, I can measure them, I can quantify them, I can turn them into hard numbers with scientific evidence that I've measured them accurately and correctly, and I can then use that to match other people's habits to those numbers. If we can't catch those who are successful in the environment, we are dead. We start guessing.
So just to follow it up, so let's take the fire environment. So you would then look at someone who's a successful firefighter who's been there for 8 months minimum, and say that Piet Pompies or Piet Fireman or Fireman Piet is the most successful guy, then use him as the benchmark and then go on from there.
Sorry, Paul. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we would like 3 of those. Because one person, what happens, it's a bit of a statistical exercise to explain it, Paul, but what happens if we only have one person in the benchmark? We narrow the benchmark down to be so tight that it's very difficult to find other people that is a good match to that environment. And it's just too stringent and sort of too rigid. The moment we have more than 15 people in the benchmark, then it becomes too soft again. So then their habits, they start to influence one another in such a way that a broad base of people would fit that environment. So we need somewhere between 3 and about 8, 9 to build an optimal benchmark. But that's the only way we can really determine who will work in that environment, irrespective of what the environment is. You need those people who has been there for at least 8 months, but 3 years success is even better. I think I've answered that. Thanks, Paul. Lizette, back to you.
Thanks, Paul, for the questions. I think these are questions that people often ask, and thanks for the answer, Peter. I just want to add something, Paul. Keep in mind, and that maybe just for the purpose of the recording as well, that a benchmark is not static but dynamic. And as the environment changes, you will obviously update your benchmark. So I have seen in my experience where clients go through a turmoil period, they would obviously identify people who are successful in those circumstances. So they would then identify those top performers who thrive in a very unstable, changing environment, and they will create the benchmark. And if they are recruiting or developing during those times, they will match people to that benchmark. The moment the environment then changes again and it stabilizes, you will look at who are the top performers now, and then you will use those people as your benchmark. So you can't create a benchmark and 5 years from now you still use the same benchmark. As your environment changes or your management changes, or you've got new product lines, whatever changes in the environment, you need to take time for that change to happen and to become evident. And then you would look at who are the top performers in that specific time, and then create your benchmark and use that benchmark. So that's quite important that people understand it's not a static benchmark, but a dynamic benchmark. And it works best to get the best people into the environment and to develop accurately by using the most current benchmark of top performers who are top performers in the current situation in the business. So thank you for that. Jan, I think you've got a question, if I'm not mistaken. Please go ahead.
Here we go. Peter, this relates to a case that I sent to you, where a person over the course of 3 years did the shadow match, and they had actually a few instances of very strong habits that broke. Basically, I think there was about 5 strong habits and 1 radical, and all of them are contextual, and some of the contextual ones also sagged below. Yet, upon talking to this person, they do say that I'm fine, I'm adjusting, I'm finding my feet. Is it possible that it's more of a technical question? Are there people that are more adaptable in shaping, changing, adjusting their habits to environments? I picked up that softer ones can adapt easier, but this person knocked down stuff quite radically. And you mentioned to me personally that this can happen, but the moment I gave feedback to the employer, but is this person in trouble? Could you just give me some more handles on that?
Jan, yeah, if we look at the habits of an individual, propensity to change is normally a good indication that the person has the ability to adapt. But obviously, there are limits to the way in which we can expect the individual to adapt, to change, and to make changes to their behavior over a long period of time. Innovation is also an indication that the individual might find, he might find ways to work with the environment in an innovative manner within limits. But if strong habits suddenly drop down, Jan, we must be very careful working with that individual without very sensitive ears and a sensitive approach, because something must have happened. And we don't want to go into that something because we don't want to repeat that event that might have happened. But what my suggestion is when working with an individual like this is say, I would say, Lisette, your habits a year ago were like this. Suddenly your habits are now like this, they're much softer. Given your current situation, which of these habits do you prefer for your current situation? Then you must listen carefully, because if they then say, I prefer my stronger habits to deal with my current challenges, it tells you that there was an injury or stacking took place, and their ego position was not able to integrate their behavior patterns with the expectation of the environment. If they say, no, I'm actually more comfortable with my habits as they are now, given my current situation, it says that they have adapted, the changes they made work for them. And then don't challenge it too much. Don't challenge it too much so that they don't feel they are on the spot, because there might be injuries, but they work through the injuries and the stacking that took place, and they are okay. I just want to mention something else, Jan, on this point, is we must keep in mind that the stats indicate that 4 out of 3,000 people with a strong habit can change the habit to be radically soft by making a decision. It's not easy. There are always blood and tears if somebody with strong habits have to compromise those behaviors for survival, and that will always end up in a painful process. One must be very careful and remember, the individual had an ego position based on those soft habits that gave him a powerful position of I am in control. Suddenly he's got to acknowledge I'm not in control. It's not going to be easy, and he won't do it. So rather ask the question, which habits do you prefer given your current situation? And then work from there forward. Good question. Thanks. Thanks, Lisette.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Peter, for the explanation. I do see that we've reached the hour mark. So allow me to stop the recording. And if there are any more questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes. But for the recording purpose, thank you very much, everyone.